Green Star Buildings. It's going to be a short, high-level update. We're not going to go into any level of detail in any credits or categories. It's really just to give you an introduction. We were recently given an introduction by the GBCA themselves, and maybe you missed that. So if you're a client or an architect that works with us a lot, this is just really to get you up to speed, and we can always talk about the details later. So when we launched this webinar on LinkedIn, there's this new nifty feature that allows participants to ask a question before the webinar. So we've had our first question already from Jeff in true Jeff Robinson tradition. What do you think will be the most difficult aspect of the new Green Star tool for builders to comply with? So I want to make this little webinar a little bit more interactive. So I'm challenging our participants to either answer in the event on our LinkedIn page or in the chat while I'm talking. Just give us your views, and then we can talk about it at the end of my discussion. So getting into the presentation, I'm firstly going to be talking and giving a little bit of recap about the evolution of the buildings tool, where it came from, the timelines for uptake and the overlap, 5 things that the GBCA identified that they think we need to know about Green Star buildings, the proposed point distribution, the rating tool structure, and how the rating tool is calculated. Okay, so if you've worked with Green Star before, you'll remember the legacy tools. There were quite a few. It would be office, retail, education, various interiors. But these ratings were independent ratings. So you could rate a design rating, an office building for a design rating, or an as-built rating, and choose either or. So initially, a lot of buildings might have only pursued a design rating, and they never proved how the building was actually built and constructed. So in the evolution, the design and as-built rating made it mandatory for as-built ratings to be certified with an optional design review. So it swapped the tables a little bit. Now, with buildings, the as-built rating is mandatory, with the design assessment, and there is the difference, as being optional. So the logos and branding has changed a little bit as well, as you can see there on the right. So the big question, timelines for uptake. So since its launch in October, projects were able to register for Green Star buildings, and that will continue forward. You can still register your project for the design and as-built rating until December 2022. So from January 2023 onwards, all buildings will need to be registered with Green Star buildings. So there's still opportunity to use both at this stage. So 5 things, we're going to be talking about them after this. So the new definition of a sustainable building, the aim to meet the Paris Agreement, how it responds to sustainability megatrends. There's very clear expectations that's been set for new buildings in this rating tool, and I'll talk about that. And like every change in a tool, it brings those opportunities to provide transformation in the industry, and specifically this time in supply chain. So if you've known the old rating tools really well, this will look very different. So the branding has changed, the category names have changed, the credit names have changed. So we're sitting with 8 categories, and then there's a graphic that I'm going to share now that sort of really helps you understand the alignment with the old credits, but you'll also see new credits, which is really exciting. So this one is version 1.3 on the left and the new buildings tool on the right. And it shows that there's alignment with the categories that we're used to, but also links to other categories. So like management mainly aligns with responsible, but it has a link to resilient. Into environmental quality mainly with health, but also resilience and people. And it really makes sense about if we move on further and discuss the tool, about how the benchmark has been raised, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. So meeting the Paris Agreement targets is all about the positive category. And 6-star, it's now required for 6-star buildings to be net zero carbon. And it's all about designing and building fossil-free buildings powered by renewables, highly efficient, built with lower emissions upfront and offset with nature. But the one thing about this tool is it's not stagnant. And already, if you go into the credits themselves, you'll see how net zero has been sort of pre-programmed in for 5-star and 4-star into the future. So you'll see that by 2023 already it would be there would be requirements for a 5-star building, and 2026 for a 4-star building. So it's really driving towards net zero carbon. And this is not something that was just on the GBCA's agenda, and I think in contrary, it's been a push from the industry, and to meet those mega trends about what's happening in the world and what's going to happen. And it's meeting the goals of governments, tenants, investors, developers, and building owners, and really to address climate change, resource scarcity, and circularity. And if 2020 has taught us anything, health and well-being is so important, and how important buildings are in meeting and assisting health and well-being, especially in this year and going into the future. So I was talking about raising the bar, and there's definitely been a clear expectation of what a green building needs to do. So there's 10 minimum expectations spread over all the categories that all projects have to achieve, even to target a 4-star rating. So, and they cover, many things, but the other clear expectation is that a 6-star building will need to be designed to be fossil-free, highly efficient buildings, powered by renewables, meeting those net zero targets, and in operation as well. So if we look at the minimum expectations, these expectations amount to 30 points in the 1.3 version of Design and As-Built. And, each category has at least one. Some of them have up to 4 minimum expectations. And if you know the old tool, you'll recognize these. They were all credits that you would accept. Perhaps not all of them are there. And things like air tightness testing before in version 1.3 was incorporated in the commissioning credit in a attempt to bring it to market, to make it more, get more projects to target it. But now it's been made a minimum requirement. And in response to Jeff's question, I might give you a hint that I think this is still one of those challenges in the construction market. But you'll recognize things like environmental management plan, environmental management system, and construction demolition waste. Those kind of things have been such a big part of any good construction project that it makes sense just to have it as the baseline. And the 10% upfront carbon emissions, that is something that will really drive change in the way that materials and construction methodologies are decided upon. And showers, lockers, and change rooms, those are things that everyone did in any case. So I really think it's a sensible mix of points that's been included, but will definitely make a difference in the way that buildings are approached in Green Star ratings. So I've spoken about supply chain before. It's really to create that driver in the market. There's also been included a new method for assessing products and materials. And the intent of the whole rating and raising this bar is to create that driver and to create incentives for, just bolstering the whole supply chain in the building industry. So the points distribution, if you think of positive as energy and water and carbon in this case, it's still the biggest category, with management being responsible and nature close on their heels, and as well as the healthy category, that would be the old IEQ. So this all looks very familiar, and it makes sense if you look at the tool like we know it. So the tool rating structure, you'll see the minimum expectations. That's no points, you have to do it if you want to do the rating. And then there's the core rating tool with 15 points allocated towards net zero in operations. And then there's this sector-specific credits, and that's 10 points that is aimed at specific sectors of buildings. So educational, big railway projects, multi-res, those would be points that those specific sectors can target to bolster their final tool points tally. And then leadership is the old innovation, and there you would recognize market transformation and the leadership challenges. And there's, still opportunities there to be really innovative in your project, but you also can follow the challenges to claim points there. So how do you calculate your rating? So you basically start with having to do all the minimum expectations, no points there, and then through the core rating tool you count those. And you add your sector-specific credits, if any, if you're targeting any of those. You add your market transformation credits and your leadership challenges. And the ones in yellow there would be your net zero points, if you're targeting those. So there's different avenues that you can get to various points categories, but the interesting thing is that now to achieve a 4-star, which is best practice, you'll need a score of 15, which might feel strange for consultants having worked with Green Star a lot before. And then 5 stars, 35, and 6 star is 70 points. But if you think that minimum expectations is 30 points, 4-star, that puts 4-star up at 45, and which was the score that we needed in design and as-built. And you can see already straight away that the bar has been raised for 5 and 6-star buildings, because that puts 5-star at 65 and 6-star at a cool 100. So the bar has been raised, and I find that with any tool where you include so many of the base points, that it really becomes about outcomes.